Hello and welcome to the Distance Podcast, part of the Institute for Liberal Values. This is where we discuss how we can strive for a world in which freedom and reason are at the forefront of all human society. In this week's podcast, Elizabeth and Mike will explore the social psychology of guilt, moral identity, and in particular, how the former can lead to moral outrage directed at third parties, irrespective of wrongdoing. Okay, so welcome. We have another article to discuss. This one is on moral outrage. So you've probably come across moral outrage before. Sometimes it can be genuine or felt it, maybe you've seen somebody do something absolutely outrageous. For example, maybe somebody told a hideous lie about you. Somebody said that you were racist, homophobic, when you're neither of those things. And you feel quite rightly outraged. How dare they say something that horrible about me? I don't think it's a feeling that's alien to any of us. I think we've all been screwed over by people in the past, and as a consequence, have felt fairly outraged.
And I think we felt this, certainly about our country, about maybe our favorite sports teams who were maybe the victim of bad referees or something like that. So we felt little like sort of petty versions of this. We've also felt maybe more global or patriotic kind of versions of this. So the name of the article is A Cleansing Fire. Moral Outrage Alleviates Guilt and Buffers Threats to One's Moral Identity by Rothschild and Keefer. And we will link to the article. So I just wanted, this is like super brief summary. So what's to come? 5 studies supported the proposed guilt-driven account of defensive moral outrage, whereby self-focused guilt over personal or collective harm-doing motivates expressions of moral outrage at a third party. So in all of these studies, they offered people a way to alleviate their guilt by expressing outrage at a third party.
So what we're looking at is a situation where, let's say you feel guilty about something. One of the examples used in the paper is doing something bad to the environment. So do you recycle? Do you recycle religiously? Do you recycle enough? And imagine somebody has come up to you and in a very persuasive way told you that you don't do enough for the environment.
Well, in this case, I just wanted to be clear. So they had 2 that were environmental and 3 studies that were related to poor labor practices. And it was not personal. It was they manipulated perceived culpability, suggesting that their in-group America, in terms of the climate, or the out-group China is more responsible for climate change or poor environmental practice. Now, in the case of poor labor practices, they did somewhat manipulate personal responsibility. So that's why I was sort of correcting you, because in the environment ones, they didn't do that. But in the labor ones, they did. They asked people questions that they knew they would say yes to make them feel a little bit guilty. I sometimes buy products at big box stores. When making a purchase, I pay more attention to the cost than how or where it was made. When making a purchase, I don't think about the workers. I mean, they knew that people were going to answer yes to those questions. And so they made them feel guilty about that. They didn't do it so much in the environment ones. So, I can't hear you, Mike.
Sorry about that. I had myself on mute. I just wanted to get an abstract example out there.
Yes.
In order for it to make sense. So let's say the point is this: is you feel guilty about anything at all, really. Whether that's the slave labor that has gone into producing your iPhone, which is one of the examples.
Yes.
Whether that's feeling that you're not doing enough for the environment, and just imagine yourself in one of those cases. Imagine that you're there and somebody is in a very articulate and persuasive way letting you know the consequences of your actions, which are pretty bad for all of us, right?
Yeah, that Americans, or for example, what drive more, consume more energy, at home, waste more, that kind of thing. And so, yeah, we're culpable, right?
We are.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole point where, okay, so how is China able to be at a stage where it is committing genocide against the Uyghurs and doing all kinds of horrible things to all kinds of different kinds of people, even ethnically Han Chinese people who are being locked up in black prisons for no good reason whatsoever? How is it possible that they are doing that? How is it possible that people are being abused in order to buy the products that we all use on a daily basis? And I'm sorry to tell you this, and I'm not singling you, the listener, because I'm equally guilty of this, and so is Elizabeth. That's only made possible because, in the 1980s, Reagan, in order to break China away from the Soviet Union, agreed to make China the world's factory. And so all of this economic boom, the positive side of which is that millions of people, not as many as the Chinese would say, or the Communist Party of China would say, but definitely millions of people have been lifted out of poverty. That's the good side of it, and that is good. The negative side is that it's empowered a tyrannical regime that for many years was still tyrannical and really bad, but was getting better and has now really started to suddenly get worse again under Xi Jinping. But even at its best stage was absolutely horrendous and tyrannical. And the only reason that's possible is because of us. We've empowered that, and you are empowering it by buying their products. Now, it's not easy to stop buying their products.
No, it sure is not.
It really isn't. And to be fair, this is one plus for the Biden administration, actually. And I think Trump as well was actually moving down this direction as well. Is that I think that the establishment within America and more broadly the West has realized that enough is enough, and we are slowly detaching from that economy, though it's going to be a painful process. And we can see that. And that's why the Chinese economy is actually, and this isn't appearing in the newspapers because they have their tendrils into the newspapers, but the Chinese economy is crashing. The housing market is crashing. The banking sector is crashing. They're living on borrowed time, unfortunately, because unfortunately for the everyday Chinese person, right, who is not responsible for this. Fortunately for the tyrannical regime at the top, but it's going to be an absolute disaster over there. But anyway, you are responsible for this, as am I, and it's natural that we should feel some guilt over this.
Right. And that was why they chose what they chose, right? Because it was an easy manipulation. It's certainly something that I think most people could be primed to at least consider their own guilt. Go ahead.
So let's go to the good side of guilt, like what it does. So you feel guilty about this, and how does that manifest in the world out there? Well,
yeah, I mean, it helps manage behavior, right? Like this is what keeps it keeps a lot of us in line, right? So interestingly, well, of course, we already did a podcast on shame. Right. And so shame and guilt are not the same thing, although some research is, they're
confused the two.
Some interaction. So we tend to feel guilt for wrongdoing. And so something that we've done, we feel badly about. So like in the case of, purchasing clothing that's made in sweatshops, for example, where shame tends to be more that we feel like we're a bad person for having done that wrong thing or having thought that wrong thought or whatever.
Can I articulate the difference on this one? So let's say you have cheated on your partner and got away with it, right? So you've had a one-night stand you really love your partner, you think they're great, you think the world of them, and you've had a one-night stand when you were I don't know, at a conference somewhere or something like that, and you've got away with it. Nobody knows. What you would feel then is guilt, right? You would think, I shouldn't have done
No,
that.
you could certainly feel shame about that. Also, if you
You
believed
think?
oh yeah, absolutely. It's not about somebody finding out. It's about whether you believe that now you are a bad person, you're a bad partner maybe, or maybe you're an unreliable, or it's like now you define yourself perhaps as a cheater. Okay, so you've changed the way that you feel about yourself. That's shame,
Mm-hmm.
where guilt is just a matter of having done something wrong, and that can essentially be sort of accidental, right? Either one can be accidental, or so shame is the way that we internalize it. So it can be exactly the same behavior. So certainly someone could only feel guilt about having cheated. They could also feel shame. So this is why I'm saying, like, some of the literature is finding that they're almost they're sort of hopelessly confounded in some kinds of manipulations. So I don't want to belabor the point too much, but the emotion literature defines them sort of that way, that there's wrongdoing, and then there's like feeling like you're a bad person for that wrongdoing. And so, for example, a woman can feel great shame over having been raped, even though she didn't do
Oh,
anything wrong, right? But she can feel shamed because she feels like she's spoiled or ruined or something like that.
or a
So you
man.
don't even what?
A man could feel equally
Oh,
bad
absolutely,
for being
yes,
raped.
yes,
I mean,
yes,
that's kind of a weapon that's used in prison, right? In
yes.
order to kind of destroy men's
Or
self-image is
or
rape.
unfortunately, in the Catholic Church, just
Yeah.
saying.
No. Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Quite.
But in many ways, both of these emotions are pro-social, right? That they inspire us to be better people, to maybe you know uh, not do that again. And in this case, in this article, they're talking about how guilt can inspire us to fight on the behalf of victims. Maybe to not necessarily, maybe that guilt doesn't necessarily always elicit strategies on how to undo our own actions or make ourselves, a better person, but to focus on um, uh, strategies that will just make us feel better about ourselves in the moment, not as much about making ourselves a better person or about undoing the wrong that we did. So it's
Right.
about this third party
So let's
punishment.
again try and like flesh this out a bit in terms of the normal reaction. So if you've done something bad and you feel a sense of guilt or shame for having done something bad, then you might, as a way of rectifying your negative self-image and the sense of shame, you might think, well, okay, I've done something bad. That's done. There's nothing I can do to undo the bad thing that I've done. But in order to restore my sense of pride, my sense of a positive moral self-image, I'm now going to look for opportunities to do something good, right? Because then I can say that good thing that I'm going to do in the future, or that good thing that I've just done, that kind of balances out the bad thing that I've done in the past, right? So I did do that bad thing in the past, but I've done more good things that make up for it.
Right.
And that will restore, hopefully, I think that's a rational way of thinking about how to restore your self-image. And that's probably, that probably works. And
Oh,
good on
yeah.
you.
I
Good on you
mean,
if you're
it
doing
makes
that.
people tithe at church, right?
Right.
You get told that probably sinned, and you can drop some money in the basket. that that helps alleviate your guilt a little bit. But certainly
And
volunteer work, and
right.
yeah.
Well, I mean, like one of the examples would be gang members who have been involved in all kinds of organized crime and, gang violence. A lot of the time, they will feel a sense of guilt and a sense of shame for the life that they've led. And then they will then volunteer to go
Mentor.
into
Yeah.
mentor other kids who were in a similar situation to the situation they were in and might be flirting with the idea of getting involved in criminal violence, or already are in criminal violence, and try and help them get out. So that's a sense of shame and guilt, and how it can be productive, and how that helps restore the former criminal's sense of moral worth, by actually doing good things.
Right.
And by actually making a positive difference. And that's great.
Yes.
That's wonderful. But
yes.
Oh, carry on,
yes.
sorry.
Yeah. So no, I was just gonna say, yeah, but there's also some literature that they cite here that people will also simply punish a third party in order to make themselves feel better. And by the way, I looked up this one article that's cited in here somewhat heavily, Jordan, which is an article in Nature, and we'll put that in the notes also. Those Nature articles, they put all their methods and stuff. They don't put it in the article, so I can't tell you a lot about because they used game theory, and they're like, oh, go to this site and you can learn about them. And it was gobbledygook to me because I don't know enough about game theory. So, but they used sort of, economics research. They use game theory a lot. And so one of the things that they found was that third party punishment worked well in order to get other gamers to trust them. So there were two options. One was to help someone in the game, and one was to punish a third party in the game. And those worked not quite equally well. People did trust gamers more that had demonstrated that they would help someone, but a very close second was the willingness to punish a third party for some transgression. So I guess in the article, one of the examples that they give is, well, if you are willing to punish someone for racism or stealing or whatever, then you probably won't steal from me. You probably aren't a racist, right? Because you're punishing someone else. And so it was, that is a compliment to this article, as we're going to see. So this, but that Nature article found that there was not only a person, they didn't measure personal benefits, as in the current article that we're going to talk about. They measured the communication aspect and how it built trust in people who were playing the game with them, if they were willing to punish a third party. So it worked well in social circles.
So here is where that could be a good thing, and here's where that could be a bad thing. So in a sense, there are wrongdoers who are out there in society. Sometimes those wrongdoers can be quite scary. And if you are prepared to confront those people and punish them on the basis of them doing something bad, then in a way you warrant being trusted because You've been brave.
Right.
And so that's the positive mechanism in place. And more often than not, that probably works in exactly that way. And that's why it's in place. That's why people trust people who punish people, because you're looking at somebody and they are punishing somebody who's bad, and they're standing up to somebody who's scary, a bully, for example, a schoolyard bully. And yeah, maybe you deserve a bit of a reward if you're brave enough to go up against those people. Good for you. And that's why people will trust you on the basis of doing that. However,
yes.
There are people who will game the system.
Exactly. Yeah. And there was no evidence in the Nature article of, necessarily personal motivation, personal gain, but certainly in the article that we're talking about, we see the personal psychological advantage, right, to punishing a third party. And and this is more to do in this article. It has more to do what we might think of in cancel culture as calling out a company, right? Because these were questions about a desire to punish companies, oil companies, for example, in the climate change one. So, punishing a corporation is more, I mean, certainly we can make the connection to canceling an individual, but this article really is more relevant specifically to maybe willingness to call out a company, to cancel a company, or tweet out you shouldn't buy this brand or whatever for some reason.
And to be clear, maybe you shouldn't buy the brand.
Well, exactly. Exactly.
But what is psychologically what's going on here? Is the reason that you're not buying the brand because the brand has done something wrong? Or is there some other reason why you're not buying it and they've done something wrong? Two things can be true at the same time.
And are you even not buying it, or are you just posturing, right?
Yes.
Like, my suspicion is that, these people who were in this study, who, were given an opportunity to demonstrate their moral outrage on a piece of paper, right? Well, that's not true. They were on a computer. They were Amazon Turk. I think they were all Amazon Turk participants. So they were on a computer. So, but their willingness, I mean, this was not even a fake tweet or anything like that. These were questions, right? So, a great follow-up would actually be to have someone write a potential, comment or whatever, and ask people, would you like to post that? So they wouldn't really post it, because they're in a study, but how, to what extent would you like to post that or whatever, and we'll let you decide whether you should. So these people were just answering questions. So the degree to which they felt anger at, say, international corporations for the harm done to sweatshops. So this was the moral outrage measure. And they did I was like several pages worth here of results on study one, simply to convince us, right? Multiple analyses. They might have overanalyzed this data a bit, but tortured, we sometimes call it torturing the data. Just simply, though, to convince us that guilt predicted moral outrage, which predicted sort of this retributive, support for retributive justice.
So let's explore the link between guilt and moral outrage then. So, you feel guilty about something, and again, we kind of discussed this. You've done something wrong, whatever that is, you feel guilty about it, and you're looking for some way to restore your moral image. I did something bad. How can I restore my moral image? And then what you might tend to do is to look for an example of somebody else doing something bad.
Right.
Now, here's the funny thing. If you're not feeling guilty, you're less likely to be looking for other people doing bad things, right? Because you're not looking for that opportunity to restore your own moral worth. If you are feeling guilty, you're going to be looking for other people to do bad things, and then you're more likely to be outraged. You're more likely to be outraged by something bad somebody else is doing, or they might not even be doing something bad. That's the scary thing.
No, you're just primed and ready, right?
You're primed and ready to see moral outrage. You're primed and ready to see people doing bad things. And you're ready to work yourself up into a moral frenzy, and then try and punish that person for doing something bad because you feel guilty about something completely separate.
And the interesting thing is, from study 2 on, they were manipulating whether the potential, the persons or people who might feel guilty are either in your in-group or in your out-group. And when they started to manipulate that, they found some interesting interactions in the data. So no main effect, what they call a main effect for in-group or out-group. So there was no difference in guilt, for example, between significant difference. No significant effect for whether people got to express their moral outrage before they pondered their guilt, or after they pondered their guilt. No real effect. However, a significant interaction in that when it was the in-group that was responsible. So, for example, in terms of the climate, these were American participants, and that America was, the article indicated that America was the biggest contributor. Then people, when people were able to express their moral outrage at a third party prior, when they expressed their moral outrage prior to guilt, they had higher, no, wait a minute. Prior to expressing moral outrage, they experienced more guilt. So when they weren't offered the outlet, the outlet, when they weren't able to sort of expunge their guilt, they felt worse. But when they were able to express their moral outrage first, then they felt less guilty. So to your point of just sort of like looking around for some place to put it, right? This is just a study where they offered the questions about moral outrage before or after the questions about guilt, and that was enough. They simply just offered people in the study an opportunity to say, "I am outraged," and that was enough to alleviate guilt. I find this fascinating.
I find it terrifying.
And terrifying, yeah. But just that little, just that ability to answer some questions that say, yes, this outrages me, just was like a weight off of their shoulders. But if they were asked about guilt first and then outrage, then they still felt the guilt. So yeah, I mean, it is terrifying and fascinating. I mean, certainly it would be, and I think you sent a few notes, and I think you actually mentioned this, that, this could be used for good, right? Like, let people, give people an opportunity to be outraged about something that is maybe more abstract, and it's not a person, it's not, and again, sometimes we're not saying that people should never feel outraged and that they should never push against something. But looking for sort
we're
of
encouraging
random,
them to, right?
Yes. But think about road rage, right? Like, I mean, like, are people just sort of like something's like they get in a tizzy about something, they feel guilty about something, I don't know, and they're just looking for someone to not turn on their turn signal, or like, could this happen? I mean, it is terrifying.
And it's really, really terrifying because, like, and like, as usual, right? This article isn't about critical social justice.
No.
But it doesn't matter because the principles aren't broadly applicable.
Yes.
And so what I've noticed, and if you're here, probably what you've noticed, is that critical social justice alleges, and sometimes has a fair point, insofar that it is trying to kind of manipulate a sense of guilt, right? So if you're white, according to critical social justice, even though you did not participate overtly in this kind of behavior yourself, you are privileged at the expense of black people. I don't actually agree that that's true, but that's certainly the case. So therefore, your privilege comes at a cost. Now, the more nuanced versions of critical social justice would not say that you're guilty of a transgression or that you're morally a bad person because of that, but that you owe some kind of debt, that you should feel guilty. You owe some kind of debt, and you need to restore the balance. And so what it's doing is it's manipulating this sense of guilt among privileged white people. And I think it's no surprise. That's why, the vast majority of people who go along with critical social justice are both privileged and white.
Right.
Relative to black people, relative to all other ethnic minorities, are far more privileged white people. Not so many working class white people, because working class white people probably don't feel privileged because they aren't. And therefore, it's much more difficult to stoke up those feelings of guilt. But amongst privileged white people who would look at themselves and say, okay, I've got all kinds of things that other people don't have, I can recognize that. And I can recognize that maybe that, in a cosmic sense, that's not fair. And it isn't fair in a cosmic sense. There's not much you can do about it other than give everything away, but you first. But you are. I don't think you should feel guilty for that. But you are put in a privileged place, and it's easily understandable why you would feel guilty, because you can see that you have things that other people don't have, and you can see that you probably haven't earned them either. Now, it'd be one thing if you were somebody who, and there are people like this who came from a working, white or otherwise working class background and really worked their way up from poverty to or near poverty, or just being poor to being somebody who's incredibly successful. At that stage of success and having all the riches that you'd earned, you probably wouldn't feel guilty. But if you were born into them, as most undergraduates, if not all undergraduates, are, and you see that you have these things that other people don't have, and you recognize that you haven't earned them, it's easy to understand why you would feel guilty for that. And then you look at Black people who don't have it.
Right.
And so you've got a sense of guilt.
What's the easy way to atone, right? To assuage your guilt. And, this article suggests, one easy way is third-party punishment, right?
Right, because the hard way would be to say, I haven't deserved any of this, and so I'm going to give it away.
Yeah. I mean, I don't see, the white people white women in my department all quitting for the cause that they claim to believe in so strongly, which is to increase the diversity in the department. Sort of like you said, well, you first, right? So this is the cause that they believe in and that they claim to be fighting hard for. But as you say, they're not quitting their jobs in order to make room for those minority candidates. So, that's the hard thing to do. And I'm not suggesting they do it. I'm not saying that.
No, quite.
But
I don't think they should feel guilty either.
But I don't think they should feel guilty either, right?
No, and like you're in a position where and here's what I think would be appropriate. You recognize that you haven't earned, maybe you've earned some of it, but you haven't earned all of the things. So let's say you've worked hard, you've done well at university, you've got a decent tenured position in a half decent university, and that's great. You've achieved that, you have worked for it, but you recognize that you've had opportunities that have come as a consequence of the things that your parents or your grandparents or your ancestors or any combination of people, that they've managed to give you these opportunities that other people don't have, and that there's something not quite right about that. And that's great, there isn't. But the way in which to deal with that, I wouldn't say would be to feel guilty. The way in which to deal with that would be to say, well, okay, I recognize the kind of advantages that I have. How can I extend those advantages to other people? That would be the appropriate way of dealing with it. Not just this kind of sense of guilt of, oh, I'm an oppressor and all of that. Because none of you, let's be frank, none of you are going to quit your jobs and give it to another person. And even if you did, it might not be a good thing.
Exactly.
Right? Because these advantages that you've been given have made you a competent person, and it means that you can do your job well. So giving your job to somebody else who might not be as good as you are at doing it, that might not be a good thing.
Right.
Try and extend these advantages to other people. That's the way it should work. And by the way, that's something that liberal democracies, not being perfect, but compared to other forms of government, have been fabulously successful in relative to other forms of government. So no, I mean, I don't think that guilt in this kind of sense that you should give up your job is a good thing.
No.
But there's a really toxic thing that people are doing, which is going for the easy way out. So that's not giving up their jobs. That's not actually thinking, okay, what is the extra work that I can do in order to extend the advantages that have made me the kind of person I am today, which is a good and competent person? How can I work hard to extend them to other people? That would be the work of doubling down on liberalism and liberal values. That's hard work, especially when liberalism is under assault as it is right now, right? And instead, there's an easy and very toxic way out, which is to blame innocence.
Right. Let's see. In study 3, that was an environment one also, and in this case, the dependent variable was moral character. So they were measuring guilt in the first two, in this one, moral character, and they found a similar pattern in that. Let me just, so the in the in group, people who were offered in the in group conditions, so that's America contributes to climate change more than not that China. Okay, so in the in group is responsible for climate change. People who were offered an ability to, or the third party directed outrage, rated themselves as having significantly higher moral character. So after having expressed outrage, they believed that they were of higher moral character. No other significant differences other than that in the in-group condition, if they weren't offered the outrage, they were there was a marginally significant difference between in-group and out-group. So the main effect, or the main interaction, was that getting that third party outrage made people feel more that they had a higher moral character.
Okay, so let's be nice to begin with.
Okay.
So let's say that you feel guilty because you've bullied somebody in the past. You've now stopped that behavior. You feel a degree of shame for that behavior, and you see somebody else being bullied in the same way that you once bullied somebody. And you develop a sense of outrage because you recognize that what you previously did was wrong. And then because of that righteous indignation that you're feeling, you go after that bully and
intervene. That's right.
You intervene. Fair enough.
Yes.
Well done. Good. Okay. There's nothing wrong with that. And the reason why this works is because, in all likelihood, more often than not, this kind of behavior is adaptive on the individual and social levels. However, what if your sense of guilt is something that has been manipulated? What if your sense of guilt is that, oh, I'm a white person, I am privileged in such a way, and maybe you are, and you feel guilty because of all of these advantages that you've been given that other people lack. And again, fair enough. And there is this sense of guilt that's building up and up and up and up and up inside you. And somebody is accused of something very, very vague. Say somebody's accused of a microaggression. Now you have the opportunity to get outraged.
Yay, yes.
Yay, oh my God. And you can see examples if you go on YouTube.
Yes.
How dare you ask me where I'm from?
Right.
And then they have how dare you ask her where she's from? And then another person, oh my God, I can't believe you just said that. And everybody just gets worked up into this frenzy of, instead of righteous indignation, when you're fighting an actual bully,
right,
you're working yourself up into a sense of self-righteous indignation, where the wrongdoing or otherwise of your target is irrelevant.
Right.
Maybe they did do something wrong. Maybe they didn't.
Right.
Doesn't really matter to you, if you're honest.
No, it does not.
Because you're not going through a process of investigation. And
no,
look, you might
it's
not
not about them. It is all about you feeling better about yourself. Yes.
Now, if you've seen somebody punch somebody, fair enough. You don't need to go through that kind of whole process. There's an act of violence, intervene, stop it. Great, okay. But if it's just an accusation that hasn't been fleshed out, you don't know whether that's right or wrong, but you've just jumped on it anyway. You've gone through no process. You've gone through no process of, okay, maybe it's true, maybe it's not. Let's sit down, have a cup of tea, think about this, gather evidence, and make an informed judgment. You can do that. You're smart enough to do it. If you're listening to a podcast or watching the YouTube of a podcast in which people are kind of going through concepts from philosophy and psychology, if you understand this, you're smart enough to do that, right? But sometimes you don't. Sometimes you're going to jump on this kind of this self-righteous indignation. It's all about you trying to assuage your own guilt and project it onto somebody else who could very well be an innocent. and often
And
are
this
innocents.
idea that after you've done this, you feel you're of higher moral character. This is, also, a symptom, right?
Mm.
That, this mentality of, having the moral high ground, sort of feeds on itself. And if somebody has the audacity to push back against your moral outrage, then, having the high moral high ground essentially just, gives you more, I don't know, you feel more empowered maybe to justify your outrage and to justify the third party punishment, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like moral crack, isn't it?
Yes,
You
yes,
know, you know, it's easy to get hooked on this stuff.
yes,
You get to have your cake and eat it. You get to,
yeah,
on the one hand, enjoy being an appalling bully,
right,
irrespective of whether your target has done something wrong or not. It doesn't really matter. Maybe they have, maybe they haven't. Probably they haven't, but maybe they have. But it doesn't matter to you because you're not going through the investigation to find out whether
right,
they have or have not. So their wrongdoing is completely irrespective,
correct,
right? So you can't claim to be moral
right,
about punishing, even if you're punishing somebody who's done something bad. You can't claim to be moral because you don't have the basis to make the judgment of whether they've done something bad. You're just
right,
jumping on the bandwagon, right?
right,
So if they've done something wrong, what you're doing is bad. If they've not done anything wrong, what you're doing is still bad. It doesn't matter. You don't have the qualification to make the judgment. And it's crack. You get to behave like an appalling bully and feel wonderful about it at the same time.
yes, yes,
I mean, which is absolutely terrifying. And this is what's happening. When somebody jumps on a Twitter cancel mob,
right,
like if you've done that, do you really think that you've spent time going through the evidence? Maybe you have. Maybe you're 1 in 1 million who has. But the vast majority of people haven't. And how do I know this? Because once you do go through the evidence, you find that the vast majority of people who have been made victim to these things are innocent. And people just jump on it and feel
right,
wonderful for doing it.
and yes,
Would that be dopamine?
yes, yes, yep,
Well, that's why I'm using
uh,
crack cocaine, right,
yes.
as the metaphor.
Oh
Because
no,
what does
yes,
crack cocaine give you?
that's a great example. That's a great example. Yeah.
This is literally the same chemical in the brain, isn't it? It's both. They're both.
Yeah.
When you do crack, you get dopamine. When you act like an appalling bully because of some kind of cooked up social justice excuse, you also get dopamine. So it's literally the same neurochemistry is going on there, I think.
Yeah, I'm not gonna, serotonin, dopamine. I'm not gonna, I know just enough to be dangerous. Just enough to be dangerous with regard to that. So I can say enough terms to sound like I know what I'm talking about, and then get caught not knowing what I'm talking about. So,
But actually, we should put a caveat in there. If you know more about neurochemistry than the two of us do, which is highly likely,
yes,
send us a correction.
yes,
And
yes.
even
Say
better
no,
if
it's
you,
not dopamine, it's serotonin, or
more likely
yeah,
it is dopamine, but is this and this and
yeah,
that. There are all kinds of other things involved. If you do know about that, do send us an email because we'd love to have
yes,
you on to discuss like the neurochemistry, what actual chemicals are
yes,
happening here. We love corrections,
yes,
and we'd love to like
and
explore this even further because I mean that must be
yes.
really fascinating to know the
Yes, your
neurochemistry.
brain on moral self-righteousness, right?
Yeah,
To-
what's going on?
yeah. Um, okay, so in study 4, it was labor again. And in this case, it was personal moral character again. That was the outcome variable. And so in the third party directed outrage condition, and this people felt they were they had more personal moral character, and in this case they actually measured people's attitudes, their dispositions, they controlled for, if you will, people's attitudes, uh, it within the study. So they actually used people's pre-existing attitudes about the issue of labor practices. So, so among those who blamed international corporations for harmful sweatshop conditions, the opportunity to express moral outrage led to significantly higher personal moral character ratings. But people who didn't have that tendency, who just simply, don't tend to perceive international corporations as more or less culpable, the outrage just essentially their moral character ratings were unaffected. So it's only those people who were sort of already more, I don't know, more sociopolitically inclined to believe in or be concerned about sweatshop kinds of activities. Study 5 also used the labor relations, and they moral and their people's moral outrage. So they had a control affirmation condition, and in this case, people the control condition, people were asked to describe something in their life that they have complete control over. So they actually had like this little affirmation exercise. So people got an opportunity to sort of feel better about themselves in that they could describe something you have control over. In the experimental condition, in a few sentences, briefly describe something about that makes you feel good, like you are a good and decent person. So in this case, people, sort of thought about themselves as good people. So in the moral affirmation condition, people felt less moral outrage. So simply going through that exercise of thinking of themselves as, a good and decent person lowered the outrage. Those who thought about something that they had control over felt more moral outrage. So perhaps actually feeling more in control, perhaps maybe made people the increased self-efficacy, maybe. And so it's hard to know, which was one increasing it or was one lowering it. There's an interaction there, but could be both, or it could be just one or the other. You can't quite tell. But that was 5 studies, again, that supported this sort of guilt-driven account of outrage. So a self-focused guilt, either in personal or in a sort of a collective sense, motivated people to express moral outrage.
See, then now, like usually when we go through these podcasts and we're looking at psychological phenomena, I usually see myself in it, right? So the dark triad, narcissism. There must be some narcissism in me because, I think I feel confident enough. I feel confident enough in taking these people on, which must mean that I think I'm brighter than them, and I do think I'm brighter than them most of the time. Machiavellianism. I can point to times when I've used slight, not kind of dishonesty, but I've known, no, actually not dishonesty, but I've known what buttons to press. Let's put it that way, in order to get a rise out of people who I am going up against, in order to expose them for what they are, and that's not the same as just saying you are this, this, and this. I'm like, no, I'll prod you here, here, and here, and you'll react in a certain way, and that, that's Machiavellian. So, like the dark triad, I certainly see that in me. We also talked about the symbolic quest for immortality, the kind of the heroic narrative of going up and fighting people. I certainly see that in me as well. But this is what I don't see in me. This is I don't feel guilty for anything to start off with. But even when I have felt guilty for something, I can understand on the one hand, like maybe as a kid, right? You feel guilty for stealing somebody's sweets. And then you try and pretend, oh, it wasn't me who stole the sweets, it was that kid over there. But that's not really what's going on here, right? Like it's darker than that. It's like I stole some sweets and I feel guilty for that, and therefore I'm gonna try and assuage my guilt by accusing somebody of doing something completely different, something wrong,
Right.
and then being outraged by it. That's something I can't understand.
Well, here's the thing, though. Um,
Go ahead, tell me how I'm doing it, because I
no,
just don't see
no, no,
it.
no, no, no. I mean, I think the point here is that we don't see this in ourselves, and that for the most part, we aren't really capable of it. I mean, um, we're not good at uh, thinking about our own thinking. And
Metacognition.
um, yeah, yeah. And so I think that we're really, what we're good at is post hoc explanations, right? And if people ask us, questions, we'll give them an answer. There's simply no way, though, to know whether those answers are based in, reality, in terms of our true of what our motivations were at any given moment. So much of what we do is driven by non-conscious processing. Against, slow learning produces fast responding, right? And so I just don't want to say that you do this, or
I
that I
might be.
do this, but exactly, but we may be. And oftentimes, uh, more often than not, most of the time, all day long, we engage in things that behaviors, think thoughts, say things, do things that for which we are never held accountable, because they're simply so unimportant to the other people we interact with, to the world. We're just not affecting change in any way. So we could be doing this, um, and actually, gaining some, psychological benefits from it, that that isn't, in a way that isn't hurting other people,
Mm.
and therefore they're not, we're not being held to account. We could also be doing it in ways that are potentially hurtful, but maybe we're doing it ineffectually. So we do such a bad job of it that
That doesn't really
it
matter.
doesn't
Yeah.
really matter. Or maybe we do it to people who love us, who don't hold us accountable for it, because they know, especially if they love us and they're still in a relationship with us. Research suggests that they're really good at explaining our behaviors in terms of situational um, uh, reasons, and so they allow us to get away with things. That's how we stay in long-term relationships, is that we give people leeway, and we explain behavior that's not explainable. We say, like, oh, he forgot our anniversary because he's been working late a lot. So my point is, we could be doing this a lot and getting the psychological benefits, and really not being held to account. And because these people didn't actually do anything either. They simply said, this pisses me off, in a study,
Mm-hmm.
and that worked. So anyway.
There's a guy called, I think his name's Kevin Simler. Have you heard of him?
Mm-mm.
There's a book he wrote with somebody else. I think it's him. Let me find out. It's a book called The Elephant in the Brain.
That's a
You
great
probably
title.
enjoy this. Yeah, The Elephant in the Brain. Hidden motives in everyday life. Kevin Simler and Robin Hanson. it's a really, really good book. And it basically talks about this. It talks about how there is so much going on in our brains that predicts for certain behaviors that we are unaware of, but that we can kind of tease out by observation.
Mm-hmm.
And they do that in the book. It's a great book. I think that they make the point that, we think of ourselves as the pilot in the plane,
Right, and we are
the
not.
plane, and we're not. We're more like the press secretary,
Yeah,
like
at best, at
at
best.
best,
Yeah.
and not a very good one. Although, and so, like, I mean, from my perspective, there are certain, I do things, I notice myself doing things that I'm not the author of. Do you know what I mean? I
Yes.
notice. So
Yeah.
for me personally, one of them is stimming. So I don't do it like, I don't rock backwards and forwards or anything like that, but I talk to myself. When I get like a surge of emotions or things that I find difficult to process, often it's when I'm thinking back about something I did when I was a kid that I was embarrassed about, or I'm thinking about somebody who's really pissed me off and I get that kind of surge of emotion. I will talk to myself. I'll say something like, I need a drink. And I don't actually want to have a drink. I don't want to have a beer, but I'm using that because that's kind of like a nicely disguised kind of stim. But I find myself doing that like all of the time. And I only catch it after I've said it, right? I only catch it after it's
I
already
have
come out.
uh, some songs from my childhood that I sing in my head when I'm
Mm-hmm.
trying when there's a I'll find myself humming or something when I recall something that I'm embarrassed about or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. That's interesting. So yeah, I guess, I mean, I think that we should be charitable to ourselves and to others, because so often we are navigating um, this complicated, social space, as best we can. And I think if we were all more, this was sort of the theme of our heterodox talk, right? That if we simply viewed a lot of these foibles, these missteps of people as simply that frankly most of the time people are almost sleepwalking through their world, and a lot of things that are said or done that you might take offense at, were simply just that they just didn't care. That's not that that's a I'm not saying that not caring is a good thing, because
No,
you should, but if you walk around the world caring about everyone all the time, you also aren't going to get anywhere. There, you have to have this balance. And so often I think that that what people are interpreting us, what we all of us interpret sometimes as an affront, is, it's actually their shit going on in their heads. It's we just happen to be, there to
you
either
see,
get blamed or whatever.
look, I'm fine with all of that. I'm fine with being blamed some of the time for stuff that I'm completely innocent of. But something's changed, hasn't it? Like
Yes.
these. So these kinds of psychological processes have been there for time immemorial.
Right.
They're hardwired. If they weren't for the most part, well, at least for the most part of
Beneficial.
history, beneficial, they wouldn't be here.
Exactly.
Or if they are, you'd be like a really dysfunctional human being who'd end up getting murdered or drop out of the gene pool, right? But the fact that they're so ubiquitous means that it is for, or at least it has been for most of human history, a decent thing that we have these things that you are prepared to get outraged at injustice and stand up to the bully. What's changed, I think, and here's where we kind of go into new territory, because there's no evidence for what I'm about to say. I'm just, this is conjecture. Well, this is where it gets interesting, right? What has changed, I would advance, is that social media has evolved to hijack these natural tendencies that are more often than not good. And so we are presented with a bewildering array of lies about a whole host of different people, and we are given the opportunity to become outraged, to become part of a mob.
Super
And
quick, within
right,
yeah,
yeah, like with a millisecond.
yeah,
So for example, you imagine that you went into a new job and there were different cliques in your new job, right? So there were different cliques and they didn't get on with each other all of the time. Maybe this clique got on with this clique but not with that clique, whatever. There's kind of like a politics system that's going on in your office, which is normal, right? If you start a new job, that's what you have to encounter. I just started a new job and I completely avoid everybody like the plague. Because I know better. But apart from the students, of course. So, you've gone into that environment. Which clique do you side with? That's a complex decision.
yeah.
You're probably not going to side with the first one, or you might do, but you're going to have to expose yourself to different arguments of why this is good or why this person is bad. Maybe there is an office bully that should be avoided because they've behaved in horrible ways. But when somebody says that this person is awful, do you believe it immediately? If so, you're pretty naive.
Right.
And that isn't to say that you're wrong, but you're pretty naive because you shouldn't go along with what people say because they will be trying to manipulate you some of the time. If you're halfway smart, you're going to try and find things out for yourself, and you're going to try and find out who are the real good actors and bad actors, and that way you're going to protect yourself from things. So you know that you have to take time about these decisions. Yet on social media, there's no cost, right? So if I decide that in an office setting before the days of social media, that I think Elizabeth Spivak is a complete waste of space because I believe the one person that didn't like her, because she's the actual waste of space, let's say, that's the one person that didn't like you, which I would believe to be true, actually. And I've gone along with that person, and I've acted in a terrible way towards you as a consequence of believing that person's lies. There is going to be a cost that I will have to pay for that, right? And maybe you'll forgive me when I say I'm sorry. You probably would be. You might. I would be slightly terrified. Anyway, but the point is that you would have to make those judgments, and you would have to, if you want to be successful in the judgments that you would making, you would have to put a significant amount of effort into thinking about that problem. Who am I going to associate with, and who am I not going to associate with? On social media, you can just jump on somebody.
Right.
And there is no cost.
And you can extricate yourself from one group and move, and you can block somebody and that kind of stuff, right? So if which is a lot easier than having to see somebody in the hallways that you maybe don't want to align yourself with anymore.
Yeah.
Isn't it pretty easy to get rid of?
I mean,
yeah.
You just get rid of Twitter. The way that Twitter at least used to work, because it was even worse, right? So let's say that you have a blue check mark. So now you have to pay to become a blue check, I think.
Do you? Because I'm hearing that they're just appearing on certain people's certain people's sites that haven't even asked for it. So I don't know.
Look, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. But the way the system used to work before Elon Musk took over was that you could get a blue check mark if you were a celebrity. But if you were a celebrity, you had to be a celebrity of a certain. You either had to be absolutely massive, like a Jordan Peterson, who they would hate, but they couldn't deny it to because he's so massive. Or if you were a minor celebrity, you could get one if you kind of bribed somebody, or which actually happened, or if you were of an ideological bent that the people at Twitter were in favor with.
So the blue check mark has been around all along. It's just okay.
So like of my friends that had it, for example, Colin Wright, who was quite famous, would never get one because he wasn't as big as somebody like Jordan Peterson, right? So he wouldn't get one. Now he can get one because he can pay for it. Whereas my my journalist friends would automatically get them if they were reporting for somebody like Bloomberg or someone like that, or the Financial Times. But a minor woke celebrity would automatically get one, or a minor, somebody really minor. Helen Pluckrose, for example, who is, best-selling author, she couldn't get one.
Wow.
But somebody with a tenth of her following,
right,
who did a minor podcast and was, woke to the nines,
mm-hmm.
they'd get one really, really easily. So that's the way that it used to be.
Now you're supposed to pay a fee.
Now you're supposed to pay a fee, which I kind of prefer that, it's more egalitarian, but I'm not, I don't want to kind of commit myself to anything here because
it's still not even clear how it's working. Yeah.
No.
It's totally not
All I
clear.
can say, it's better than just getting one because you're woke. That, that's...
Yes.
So anyway, the point I was kind of trying to get to in a roundabout way was that the algorithms of social media have been engineered in such a way that if somebody like me was to go up against one of these minor people who had been given one of these aristocratic badges, and I was to make quick work of them in a debate, which wasn't easy because their arguments were generally awful, because they were getting angry about things, not because somebody had done something wrong, but because there was social status to be gained in getting angry.
Right.
I think, which I think is dopamine, but again, correct us on our neurochemistry. So they'd get angry. They'd encourage their followers to get angry. They'd single somebody out and bully them relentlessly. Then other people would jump on, and then I'd come in and I'd say, "Yeah, hold on a second. What are you saying?" They'd try and push back. I would win, not because I'm particularly bright, but simply because their arguments were that bad, and obviously that bad. Then the next thing that would happen would be that they would block me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so they've just blocked me. And in a sense, you'd say, well, fair enough, they've blocked you. Maybe they were right or wrong in their moral judgment to block you. You can argue that, but that's separate. They've not infringed on your freedom of speech by blocking you. They can choose not to speak to you if they want.
But it's not real life. It's not.
But but it's
false,
right.
Sort of.
Yes, it's not real life, but they have the right to ignore me if they want to.
Right.
Okay, but it isn't real life. I mean, it's not the kind of office situation where you have to negotiate and deal with people who are challenging, and that's a good thing, by the way, because those are the people who'll upgrade you. If you've been made a tit out of by somebody who's having like a bit of a debate with you, you're going to learn from that experience, even if you hate that person and the process of learning is just so that you can get back at them. You're still going to level yourself up. So these kinds of experiences can be adaptive. But what was happening with Twitter was that when somebody blocked me, and I was always really polite about these debates, that I was having with these people. I wasn't like, you're an arsehole. It was all logical. And I was polite to a flaw because I was doing this very English thing of being so polite I'm being rude, and kind of being polite in a very condescending way, which is a very English tactic.
I've witnessed that, yes.
I know you've witnessed, not from me, but you've witnessed it. It's a very English thing to do, and we like to do it to Americans, actually, which is anyway. But once those people blocked me, they didn't simply block me from their timeline. Like, by blocking me, if you had a blue check mark, that then pushed down my score in the algorithms.
Okay.
And so it meant that fewer people who didn't block me could see what I was writing. And that then completely screwed over my Twitter profile, so that basically nobody... and I don't know if it's changed because I haven't gone back on there, but it basically meant that hardly anybody was seeing anything that I wrote. Even people who followed me, who wanted to see what I wrote, very few of them were seeing anything I wrote at all. And you could see that because you can see how many people have viewed your tweet and how many people have liked you. So there's this kind of ideological tyranny that had been engineered to take advantage of these kinds of psychological effects.
Right.
Yeah, which was quite terrifying.
Poor Mike.
Oh, it was all right. It was just annoying more than anything. It just meant that I didn't use Twitter. And I'm not sure, I mean, whether these algorithms have been fully corrected for. I know that like Musk said that he intends to correct for them.
Yes.
I don't know whether he's
I don't think that's an overnight thing or even a 1 year thing, probably.
No.
So, yeah.
No, he just said that he notices the problem,
So one of the things that these authors ask is, they say, this raises the possibility that the mere anticipation of guilt over one's future harm doing may be sufficient to elicit third-party directed outrage as a preemptive guilt evasion. So they get their, this is in their in their discussion. So they're sort of proposing this possibility that
So you're worried about being cancelled?
anticipatory. What?
Yeah, so you're worried about being cancelled. You know that it's so easy to be cancelled because you're walking around on eggshells and you see other people being cancelled all of the time, and you know that it could happen to you at the drop of a hat. And so in order to kind of offset that, let me get in as many kind of online mobbings as I can so that I can demonstrate that I'm a good person.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. I mean, yes. So could we be doing this not only as a defense, right, but as an offensive mechanism, almost like
A preemptive strike.
Yeah, exactly. Sort of building up a bank account
Yeah.
of, so that, in case I feel guilty later on, I've got, I've got some morality credits in my backpack or whatever, that I can spend.
Well, how is this? It's kind of like a bottom-up version, although to the extent that this bottom-up can be questioned, but it's like a bottom-up version of the Chinese social credit thing.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So, you're being watched by these cameras that have this facial recognition system, although not for long because we're not selling them chips anymore, and we're not even letting them make them. And so these systems will continue to work, and then they'll break down, and then they won't be able to repair them because they can't get the parts. So don't worry about that. It's going to go. But as it is right now, there is a system which has facial recognition, which you're constantly being observed all of the time, apart from within your own home, although who knows, frankly.
Who knows? Yeah.
Who knows? If you're somebody like me who likes to drink a bit too much, and you go to the liquor shop, isn't that an Americanism? In England, we call it an off license.
A what
bottle
license?
shop, an off license.
Off license. Okay.
And I'm not entirely sure why. I think it's something historic. Okay. You needed to have a specific license to sell alcohol, and if you were a standard shop, you didn't have that. But anyway, we call it an off license, a shop that sells booze. So you go there, or you go to a liquor shop in America, or a bottle shop in Australia, as they call it. And you can go to these places in China, and you're being watched. And if you buy over
a little too much,
that then docks your social credit.
Wow.
But not to worry, you can go online and make loads of patriotic posts and kind of restore it, right?
Yeah.
So you have to think about these things. But in a way, when you have because not just Twitter, but Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, these social media kind of platforms have become the town square, right? YouTube as well. And they are being controlled by people who adhere to a certain ideology, who are docking your social presence, your visibility, if you contradict their worldview. Well, that is a kind of totalitarian social credit system. Yeah, it's very dystopian.
Absolutely.
And the fact that it's no less dystopian. Well, okay, maybe it's a little less dystopian than if it's being brought about by a centralized government, but this is being brought about by private corporate interests, which is it as bad? I don't know. It's still pretty awful, whichever way you look at it. And this is how ideological coercion is working, and it's making use of these things, so people get out ahead of the social credit, and they make themselves visible, and by being visible, they gain fame and status by being adherent to the ideology.
This is how we diet, right? Like, I'm going to exercise extra hard today because I know I'm going out to dinner, or I'm going to skip, I'm going to skip dessert because I know I'm going to have this other thing. It's the same thing. We're just robbing from Peter to pay Paul all the time.
Right.
I just never really thought of it in terms of this, but it is that sort of anticipatory guilt over that dessert or whatever. And so what am I doing? I'm going to build up my, all week long.
The worst of these people that play this game, like there's one of them who I really despise because he's a really gifted intellect, but he's an absolute, his name's Chris Kavanagh. He's an absolute scumbag, a real bad faith actor, and intellectually gifted, and of course he blocked me, of course. But he says nasty things about me behind my back, even though he's behind a wall. He knows I can't speak back because that's the kind of bloke he is. But a gifted intellect, and what somebody like him will do is he knows, him and people like him, he knows full well that wokeism is a serious problem, and they become the kind of the useful idiot class. So what they'll do is they'll say, okay, yeah, critical social justice, it can be bad. It's certainly been used to do bad things. Here's an example, and they'll point to an example of something nasty happening. And then they'll say, but let's get it in perspective, compared to January the 6th or something like that, it's really nothing at all, isn't it? And why would you have to compare it to January the 6th? But anyway, I'm not sure that he's made that direct comparison. I'm just, so I'm not going to put words into his mouth, but that's the kind of thing that they do. People like him do. And here is something that he has done. And then they'll go on and they'll look at an abysmal thinker, like I think probably the worst thinker out there in terms of critical social justice, which is Ibram X. Kendi. And they'll go through Ibram X. Kendi's absolute awful diatribe and just try and steel man it to a point of absurdity. And then at the same time, they'll find something stupid that Brett Weinstein has said. And he's said some stupid things, to be fair. But haven't we all?
Right.
Like, for goodness sake.
Perhaps
and then
right
say,
in this podcast.
Right. And shouldn't we be charitable enough to say, look, we've all said stupid things. And haven't we all? Because we can't be experts in anything. And what he'll do is they'll find something stupid that Brett Weinstein said and then say, look, here's something stupid Brett Weinstein said, or Jordan Peterson or somebody like that. And they've all said stupid things. I agree. And then they'll use that to poison the well, right? And then they'll say, therefore, we should not listen to Brett Weinstein or Jordan Peterson on absolutely anything because they said something stupid once. Right, well, if you're going to go by that line of argument, then that's true for everybody including you. That's your standard of reasoning. But that's what they do. That's what these useful idiot classes do. And that's how they gain their social status. That's how they gain their kind of, by, interceding, even though they know what the problem is. He's not stupid enough not to know what the real problem is. They gain popularity and clicks and support by interceding and putting up this kind of skilled defense of some of the worst thinkers out there. And yeah, it's very effective. They get a lot of followers on Twitter. People like that continually pop up in my feed, even though I don't follow them. Right. Even though, I wouldn't, I'm to the point where I have to mute some of them. I don't want to block them, but I want to mute them because I just don't want to see these bad arguments coming up all over the time. Because I know them. I've just articulated exactly what they are. Embrace the Void is another. He's like Aaron something or other. He calls himself a philosopher, but for the life of me, I can't work out. He has a philosophy PhD, but what does a PhD mean these days? I just can't see how he could call himself a philosopher. But these useful idiots who, again, they're smart enough to see the problem, but they just want to explain it away in order to kind of climb up the Twitter rankings. And this is one of the reasons, and it's not just Twitter, of course, but this is one of the reasons why things are just so out of control at the moment. Because there is this kind of like this hidden social credit system that's going on.
Right. So once again, this article is not about cancel culture, and yet. So, again, this raises, they're saying in the article, this raises the possibility that people may be able to find or create outrage-worthy targets when motivated to defend their moral status. So there you go. That's one sentence,
Well, there was also, isn't it interesting, where you can gain, and here's where I'm going to take a pop at Elon Musk. I don't know if this is true or not, but where does Elon Musk manufacture a lot of his Teslas?
Yeah, I honestly, I don't know.
China.
Oh, of course. I guess I did know that, actually.
And so how, criticizing the CCP on Twitter, that doesn't gain you much traction, funnily enough. So when I say about Elon Musk, on the one hand combating kind of woke people, on the other, there's a possibility. I don't know for certain because I can't get back there in front of the algorithm. So maybe he's not, but it certainly appears to me that there's a possibility that he might be protecting or standing up against criticism from the CCP, because if he does that, then again, I'm not making an accusation. I'm just raising that as a possibility.
I think that what we know again about people's unawareness of their motivations and the reasoning behind their behaviors and stuff. I think it would be impossible for him to tease apart, the different motivations. And they do try to create firewalls. It's a very complicated process and that kind of thing. But, I mean, it comes out all the time, that, legislators, just happen to purchase a bunch of stock or sell a bunch of stock the day before, some bill gets voted on or whatever. I mean, maybe they can't prove that it was directly related, but, well, I think that, you know, who's going to cast the first stone, I guess. But yes, it's mighty suspicious. And basically that's what this, this article is suggesting, that we should be mighty suspicious, right? We should be mighty suspicious. Yeah,
we have to be. But this is the whole point of freedom of speech, right? This is the reason why no authority, be it government or private, can ever be allowed to be in charge of freedom of speech. This is the whole point of it. And it's not because people don't say hateful things, and it's not because they don't deserve to be banned because of the hateful things that they've said, right? I can point to lots of examples of people saying absolutely disgusting things that they fully well deserve to be banned for, from any social media platform. The problem is that who can you trust to wield that power?
Right. Yeah.
And as soon as you do, it becomes manipulated by people.
Yeah. Because that person also has motives that they that they may or may not always be aware of and understand, and that's actually been demonstrated with Elon Musk, right? Where he said he was going to do one thing, and then I can't remember what happened, but a few people, 5 people or something, ganged up on him in some way, and he's like promptly banned them. And then he was like, right. Oops, I guess I shouldn't have done that. But you it's like, wow, you hurt my feelings. It's just natural human, tendency.
And let's give the devil its due here. Would Elon Musk be better or worse than most people? I don't know. Maybe he'd be better. Maybe he's doing a better. I think he's probably doing a better job than the lot that came before. At least he's to a degree accountable. At least you can say something to him. The lot before was kind of like, it was completely clandestine. So he's not perfect. But let me put it in even better terms. Who can you trust to police speech on social media? Not me.
No. I don't want
Not
it.
me.
No.
If you gave, like Lord of the Rings, you're thinking about the book or the movie. And I think there's a point where Frodo says, I would give the ring to you, Gandalf.
Yeah.
And Gandalf's like, no. And he's the wisest and most powerful and benevolent of all of the wizards. And he said, if you gave me the ring of power, I would try to turn it to do good, and in trying to do good, become the most awful and terrible thing ever, maybe even worse than Sauron himself. And that's the point. I don't want that power, not because it's not tempting to take hold of it, but because I would abuse it.
Well, and that's what this article is suggesting, right? That people who are trying to do good,
mm-hmm.
That it's like, oh, I have this, I'm outraged. I want to do good,
yes.
Are actually doing bad,
Yes.
Sometimes in pursuit of good, we do bad. And as you say, unfortunately, I think that this is a sort of a unique time. I shouldn't say unique. I think that this is a pattern that, repeats itself. But you and I are living in it for the first time, right?
Right.
Where, there's a multitude of there's an ease of opportunity, as well as a narrative that's easy, that's a set narrative that's ready for people to use, that in pursuit of this moral outrage remedy for guilt.
And look, I went on and criticized 2 people in this podcast by name and said what they've done. I mean, I've had these discussions with them directly. Can I say that if I was in their position, like that I'd been grown up in their social environment and gone through all of the environmental forces, even being genetically and psychologically distinct from them as I am as an individual human being. But if I've been subject to all of the same environmental pressures, would I be any different to them? I don't know. And this is the point, I think, and this is the point that we continuously labor as we go through each one of these psychological processes, is that we don't know whether we would be any different.
Right. We don't know if we're doing this. Yeah, we don't know.
No, it's like a lot of the time, I mean, not so much with this one, I mean, largely because I don't feel guilty about anything, and much less ashamed. Although I do feel ashamed sometimes, but it's kind of different. I feel ashamed that I don't think like other people. But it's, I feel like there's something dirty about me because of the way in which I reason is obviously so far removed from other people. So there's that kind of shame, but it's not a kind of a moral shame. It's kind of just the shame of being the outsider, different. Yeah. But these psychological processes that we see, the dark triad, the quest for symbolic immortality, to be seen as this hero, these things that motivate us to do good and bad that are based in this desire to do good, but steer us into evil. Like, we see them in us. We see them in critical social justice, but we also see it in the resistance to critical social justice. Mm-hmm. It's there. If you want to try and be a force for good in the world, it's not enough that you're brave. It's not enough that you're even brave and smart. There are plenty of woke people who are doing a lot of damage, who are both brave and smart. In some of the world's most prestigious institutions, there are also a lot of people who are pushing back against wokeism, who are doing the same sort of damage because they're becoming exactly the things that they hate, who are also brave and smart. The thing that we're trying to labor by really going into the philosophy and psychology of cancel culture, and not just of critical social justice advocates either, but on the people who are ostensibly on our side as well, is that all of these psychological processes that are pushing them to do harm because they think that they're doing good, they're in us as well.
Right.
And if you really want to try and be a force for good, I think you have to work hard at trying to understand these processes. Otherwise, the path to hell is paved with good intentions.
Good intentions,
is it not?
Yes.
Or as what's his name? Carl Jung famously said, we were talking about this line, the shadow always finds a way. And it is blackest and most dense in those people who are kind of unaware that they have a shadow. We all have a shadow. But I think also with evil more generally, the worst kind of evil is not the evil of a mass murderer, right? Because how many people does a mass murderer kill? Like a guy who picks up a knife or a gun and goes on a school shooting or something like that.
Well, yeah, we really don't know, of course, but yeah.
Well, no, we don't, but we can look at each. Yeah. But I think we could look at each individual isolated case, right?
Well, the ones that we caught.
The ones that we caught.
Yeah.
But even the number
those
of people.
Those are the bad ones. The ones that get caught are the bad ones. But this is a whole different.
No. We can deal with this because we could just say the number of people who go missing every year, right? How many is that? How many of them are murdered? Well, we don't know, but let's say it's all of them. That still doesn't. So let's say all of the people who go missing every year have been murdered by some mass murderer, and that mass murderer is evil. Let's just accept that. Let's say that that's true. The number of people who would still be killed by that means is still less than the number of people who have been killed by ideology.
Right.
Who have been killed by the likes of Mao or Stalin or Pol Pot or Hitler. Massively less, right?
Yes.
And yet, minuscule. And yet, the evil of the people like Mao, Pol Pot, Hitler is characterized by the fact that they were so sure that they were on the side of the angels.
Right.
And none of these men were idiots.
And their outrage was reserved for third parties, for the out group.
And they were absolutely motivated by moral outrage. I mean, just look at the outrage that drips off Hitler. And it's quite persuasive when you see him talking, or any of these people. They're absolutely animated by moral outrage and a desire to punish those who they are convinced are on the side of the devils. And so this is the thing. It's this, again, this absolute self-righteousness that is the greatest evil that's really out there. I mean, certainly the greatest human-driven evil. You could say that earthquakes and stuff are evil because of the consequences. But I mean, the greatest intent to do harm on behalf of a human being is in ideology and is perpetrated by people who are absolutely convinced that they're doing the right thing. And they're generally very bright as well. They're generally, Hitler was no idiot.
No.
So you've got a bright person, a brave person. You'd have to be to kind of go into that kind of world, right? He certainly wasn't a coward. And they're doing all of this massive evil out there. And because the thing that they're missing is this capacity to look themselves in the mirror and reflect upon themselves. And so if you want to be a force for good, it's not just enough that you're brave or that you're intelligent. You have to realize, as Alexander Solzhenitsyn put it, that the line between good and evil runs through the heart of every man and every woman too.
Yes.
And that you have these demons inside you as well. And this moral outrage is another one. Good. On that note,
I think we've done it.
Excellent. Well, we hope you enjoyed that terrifying journey into the heart of darkness. But remember that moral outrage can also be a good thing.
Yes.
That more often than not, it motivates positive behavior. But as we can see from history, and as we can see right now, that you have to be aware that these things can be subverted to do great harm in society. And we're trying to be aware of that ourselves too. Thank you very much.